Hi, my name is Greg Latham. I'm Sales Manager over National Distribution and Development for Innoplast. Innoplast is the largest manufacturer of can liners in the U.S. As the new manufacturer of the Zep branded products, you're going to notice two significant improvements. Your prior bags were perforated, so you had to search for the perforation, find the end of one bag and the beginning of another bag. With the Innoplast product, your bags will be dispensed on coreless interleaved rolls. This is the easiest way to dispense a can liner. And the end of the bag that's in your hand is the end that opens up every single time. The second improvement you'll notice is that all of the Innoplast bags have a star seal. The star seal is the strongest, most advanced seal in can liners. As you can see, it evenly distributes the weight around the bottom of the container, thereby eliminating any leaks. Your previous liner has a flat seal. This type of seal concentrates the weight and is more prone to rupture or leak. Can liners represent 10% of the total Jan Sand buy. This year in the U.S., over $2 billion worth of can liners will be sold. It's a very important piece of business and not something you should be walking away from. In selling can liners, there's one thing that I'd like you to avoid doing and three very easy things that I'd like you to do. The one thing that I'd like you to avoid doing is walking into your customer's storeroom, seeing that they've got can liners, looking at your customer and saying, hey, we've got can liners too. Let me work you up a quote on this and you tell me where we are. And what you've done right there is fallen into a trap, where the only thing that you're going to be discussing with your customer regarding those can liners is price. There's a much better way to do it, and that's by taking a fresh look at your customer's can liners and establishing yourself as the can liner expert. The first step in properly selling can liners is to determine the proper bag for the application. There are essentially two types of can liners you need to worry about. The first is a linear low product, and the second is high density. Linear low is the type of bag we're all familiar with. It represents about 60% of the market. It's a thick, heavy bag. It's got excellent puncture resistance. And even when punctured, the bag has enough stretch that it won't tear. So an excellent bag if you're throwing away sharp objects. Now the fact that this bag is thick means that it's much more expensive than a high density bag. And a high density bag is a great bag to use anytime your customer is not throwing away sharp objects. The high density bag is actually 2/3 lighter than the linear low bag, and yet 3 times as strong. It's a much more advanced type of resin. So while it does have puncture resistance, it's not nearly what the linear low product has. But the fact that it is so much lighter means that it's much, much less expensive. So the rule of thumb here is, if your customer is throwing away sharp objects, always use the linear low product. If they're not throwing away sharp objects, always, always go with the high density. The second thing you need to do is to determine the proper gauge of the can liner. Gauge is purely a function of weight. So you need to determine how much weight is being thrown out, and from that information, you can go to your sell sheet or the label on the carton or your catalog, and in this information, you'll see the lift strength for each size and gauge bag that you have to offer. That lift strength will tell you exactly how much weight that can liner is capable of holding. And just as an example, a 40 by 48 can liner can carry anywhere from 35 to 75 pounds depending on the gauge. So there's a lot of flexibility in there. One thing that I'd like to caution you about is when you go to your customer, if you ask them how much weight is being thrown away, typically they're going to tell you that it's more weight than is actually being thrown away. I don't know how often you've walked into a facility and seen this. For me, this is very common. As a matter of fact, I think this is actually the norm. And what you have here is a 33-gallon container with a 40 by 48 can liner. A 40 by 48 can liner is probably the most popular size can liner that we sell. Obviously, too big for this container. So how do you determine the proper size can liner? It's very easy. Measure the circumference of the container. And this holds true whether the container is round or rectangular. Take that measurement, divide it by 2, and that gives you the width of the can liner. For the length of the can liner, take the height of the container, add 5 inches, and you've got the length of the appropriate sized can liner. So this 33-gallon with the 40 by 48 can liner that's obviously too big for it, not only is it too big, it's 30% more plastic, which means 30% more cost for your customer. It's also not very attractive. So by measuring the container, we know that the proper size can liner is a 33 by 39. You've saved your customer money, and you now have a better looking can liner on the container. So now you know the improvements to expect in the Interplast can liners. You also know the proper way to sell can liners. You know to determine the appropriate type of bag, be it linear low density for puncture resistance or high density if puncture resistance isn't required. You also know how to determine the gauge, which is purely a function of the weight of the waste. You also know how to accurately measure the container to determine the proper size can liner. We're very excited to work with you to increase your can liner sales. If you need samples or if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email address is glatham@intoplast.com. Thank you.